Geneticists and fox lovers of the world, unite, because they finally did it! They made the ongoing effort to convert the world's most adorable maniacs into humanity's most adorable friend into a board game. And not just any board game, a board game that has it all. A horde of slightly edible looking dice big enough to fill a hat. More curly tails than you could find at a furry convention. Dry erase markers? And, of course, oodles and oodles of foxes, so beautifully illustrated that you will wish you yourself were hand-drawn so you could enter these art pieces and run your little hand-drawn fingers through their plush coats. And at the heart of it all, strangers meeting, love blossoming, mating pairs. Isn't nature beautiful? In the fox experiment, you and up to 3 fellow scientists will breed 5 generations of foxes, with each generation after the first becoming increasingly amiable. After the friendliness of the offspring in the 5th generation has been recorded, the lucky geneticist who has produced the friendliest foxes most consistently over the course of the game attracted the attention of patrons and put their pups through their paces under careful testing will be the winner. Each generation or round begins with the gathering of supplies and the selection of breeding pairs. At this stage, players will take turns in order, starting with the first player and proceeding from there. On your turn, you will be able to snag some supplies or select a male or a female fox to add to your breeding pair. You and your friends will keep taking turns until each of you has a male and a female fox in your breeding pair, and you have snagged some materials. At this juncture, separate turn-taking ceases, and players complete all of the following steps simultaneously. First, you'll see what offspring your breeding pair produces for the round. Reveal a pup from the top of your personal deck. This card will tell you whether your new friend is male or female and has a slot where you can write their name. You'll then gather the dice printed on both your parent cards and roll them, arranging the results to make as many complete symbols as possible. The symbols on these green dice are wild and can be used to complete any symbol. These dice indicate the physiological traits exhibited by your pup. They might have a spotted coat, floppy ears, a curly tail, or they might bark or whimper to try and communicate with you. For each completed symbol you've made with your dice results, you'll mark a box or circle on the pup's record. You'll then count up the number of items you've marked on the pup's card and record that number in its top right corner as a friendliness score. After you've recorded your pup's traits, you'll be able to examine them further by assigning them to studies that they might qualify to participate in based on their traits. Regardless of whether they qualify for a study, you'll collect tokens in accordance with the number of circles you marked on the fox's card and spend those tokens to unlock upgrades on your personal player board. Again, all players will be completing these steps at the same time. So after all markers are down, you can proceed to the next phase. At the start of this phase, all of the foxes from the previous generation will retire. And the pups that you and your friends have just bred will replace them to become the parents of the next generation. Then the player whose breeding pair produced the friendliest fox, that's measured by the friendliness score you would have recorded earlier, will receive some points for being such a great geneticist, and then you will reset the turn order and play will continue onto the next generation. Repeat that 5 times and Pozdravlenia! Pozdravlenia! It's supposed to be Russian for congratulations. Russians, I'm so sorry for destroying your beautiful language. You have domesticated foxes! And it only took like an hour and a half. I really don't know what's been taking the scientists so long. I mean, what have they been up to for the last 60 years? It is a bit of a teach at the start. You may want to come up with a flowchart or something ahead of your 10-minute rules lecture just to organize your thoughts. But once players get into the groove of it, it is remarkably simple. All you're really doing in every round is selecting foxes that exhibit traits you need to complete your study, recording your dice rolls, and getting points for it. And within that flow, there's really not a lot to wrestle with. You're really just looking for the friendliest fox to add to your breeding pairs, and later in the game, that is as simple as looking for the fox with the highest friendliness number on it and grabbing that one. To make sure you're able to do that, you'll have to jostle a little bit with other players to get ahead in the turn order. But other than that, it's smooth sailing. This would be a surprisingly chill game, even for one staged in Siberia, if not for Elizabeth Hargrave and her penchant for forcing players to make choices that are more difficult than selecting a major at university.
Elizabeth Hargoblin! And this is why only fools become board game players. You never know when a designer will come along with a sadistic choice. Do you draw more bird cards? Or do you get more food to play them? Make your choice and see how a player is rewarded. Oh no! We'll meet again, player!
What we might call the Hargravian dilemma in the Fox experiment emerges as you consider the upgrades listed on your player mat. Resources are kept extremely scarce during the game, so you'll only be able to unlock a few of them, so your choices are extremely important. But you kind of need all of them in order to win? Would you like to breed more foxes? Well, yeah, I mean, that allows me to complete more studies. Would you like to draw more studies? I mean, yeah, you know, more studies means more points. Well, would you like more wild dice to add to your gene pool? I mean, yeah, because that allows me to complete more traits on my foxes and complete more studies. Well, would you like to create relationships with patrons that'll give you points at the end of the game? I mean, yeah, I would. All right, well, you're only going to be able to do 2 of those things. It's like you're being asked to build a cabin and you need wood, an axe, and caulking to build it. And Elizabeth Hargrave is like, okay, you can choose to have one of those to start with. And you're like, well, don't I need all 3 of those things at the same time in order to build a cabin? And she's like, what's it gonna be? You'll unlock more upgrades over the course of the game, but you'll never have enough trait tokens to feel absolutely comfortable. Additionally, points are scored in a myriad of ways, so everyone's final score is largely a secret until the end of the game. When the game has concluded, people will score points for any leftover trait tokens they might have, any point tokens they managed to earn, any studies they've managed to complete, patrons that they've built relationships with, friendly fox competitions that they've won. Because points are scored this way, you'll never feel sure that what you're doing is actually pulling you beyond the reaches of your competition. The resource scarcity makes for a tight experience where the stakes for every choice feel sky high, but the scattered placement of point scoring opportunities leaves you perpetually unsure if what you're doing is actually pushing you toward victory. The resulting sensation is what I imagine it must feel like to race your friends across the gaming floor of an abandoned Chuck E. Cheese, except all of you are blindfolded and someone has let loose a baboon who is 6 energy drinks deep and just found your dad's collection of power tools. Except not in a way that makes people scream and throw things. In fact, it will make them quiet. Extremely quiet. So quiet that your play sessions of the Fox experiment will probably look like this. Player interaction does exist in this game, but only in fits and starts. You'll remember at the top of every round, play develops in player order as people scrape together supplies and fill out their breeding pairs. In this phase, interaction is indirect but extremely important. You're ousting your opponents from advantageous positions in the selection order. You are denying them access to prized foxes. But after that, table talk fades away into the dark of night like a traveling carnival. Silence broken only by the click of dice and the gentle swish of dry erase markers will descend over the table as soon as everyone has filled out their mating pairs. And this gives the game a sort of day at the office kind of atmosphere as players resurface periodically to grab foxes, like employees congregating around a water cooler to discuss the points of the latest bowl game with their hands tucked into their pockets before drifting back to their cubicles to resume working or watching board game reviews on YouTube. If you're watching this while you're at work, thank you for being here, and I hope this video has given you something to smile about. It may be less the class clown and more the kid who spends their lunch hour programming their graphing calculator, but there's no denying that the game is great. Mechanically, it is razor sharp. What it lacks in chortles and backslapping it more than makes up for in its ability to give you a nice puzzly time without being overbearing. And this review's already gone pretty long, but it would be remiss of me to close it out without mentioning what I believe to be this game's most impressive achievement, and that is how strikingly it illustrates the concepts of evolutionary genetics and selective breeding as they apply to the fox experiment started by Dmitry Belyaev in 1959. Transforming genetic diversity into dice is not only fun to play out, by the time you get to the 5th generation, people will be rolling these fistfuls of chunky dice, and that is a satisfying tactile exercise, but it beautifully captures the shuffling of genes that occurs between generations. The game couples this adroit handling of the theme of genetic diversity with its presentation of scientists attempting to control entropy. Studies push players to breed pups that exhibit specific characteristics for points, so everyone is constantly attempting to skew the gene pool in favor of specific traits. If your study demands foxes with spotted coats, you'll want to breed pups with coats as spotty as you can possibly make them. Those spotted pups will be up for breeding in the following generation, which is great news for everyone else looking for spotted coats, but terrible tidings for anyone looking for floppy-eared foxes. The floppy-eared camp will have no recourse but to spill some floppy-eared gene juice into the pool, and by the time you get to the 5th generation, your facility will be awash with congenial, floppy-eared, spotted foxes, with 2 curly-tailed aberrations in the corner. This genetic tug-of-war gets more complicated as players draw new studies. When you choose to unlock a new study, you draw the top 3 cards of the study deck and you select one. Since it's most efficient to choose a study that looks for the same traits as your old study, or one that asks for foxes that exhibit traits that are common in the gene pool, you'll typically go with those. This means that either all players will double down on their efforts to shape the gene pool according to their interests, or they'll cave into the status quo. The state of the foxes at the conclusion of the game will be completely shaped by player decision-making. Shifting priorities will be permanently inscribed on their genotypes. And that is just cool. What's not as cool is the fact that you cannot play this game at 2 players without incorporating its AI. The AI is meant to restrict player choices and make the 2-player experience feel more rewarding and tactical. And I mean, it's fine. It's relatively unobtrusive, but it is another thing to manage, and that is enough for me to pass over this when I am looking for a 2-player experience. If you're looking to pick this up to enjoy exclusively with 2 players, just know that the AI is minimally invasive and streamlined, but it's also there. If a little extra overhead doesn't turn you off though, don't let the AI scare you away from this experience, because it really is a well-behaved little AI. He's very polite. All he really asks you to do is flip over a card and follow whatever the card tells you to do. The Fox Experiment is a pointy little game spiked with tangy decisions. If you like your games more smart than they are splashy and with exceptional artwork, we'd recommend taking a crack at this one. And it is founded on principles established by our favorite beetle-riding Victorian naturalist. So if you happen to be a Darwin fan, well, this is some premium Darwin content, and I didn't think I'd be saying those words in that order so soon after our review of Darwin's Journey, but here we are. And that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for checking out our review of the Fox experiment. If you enjoyed the video, or you thought it was great to see me nearly break my spine trying to be the Green Goblin, make sure to click that like button, or maybe even give us a subscribe. I don't know, that could be pretty cool. It's up to you. It looks like my cat is coming to say hello. Hi. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one. Hey, you're up from your nap.